Welcome everyone to Unit Masters speaker session. This is the 6 weeks program for blockchain fundamentals. We are currently in week 2 of the program in cohort 6. And this week's focus is about understanding the blockchain ecosystem more from a strategic perspective, understanding major trends and what is happening across the different players and their dynamics. On Tuesday already, we learned about blockchain brand narratives and how the industry evolved and what kind of brands were built in the past few years and how they positioned themselves and what our exchange is doing. And today we have Professor Philipp Sandner here, and he founded the Frankfurt School of Finance Blockchain Center. It's actually one of the most vivid research organizations and also education institution within Europe. So actually everyone who's somehow related with the blockchain ecosystem will have come across the works of Philipp Sandner. And I'm very, very happy that you joined us, Philipp, to share about your perspective of the ecosystem. Maybe as a start off, would you want to share with us how you got into crypto? What is actually so fascinating about this industry or economy for you personally?
Well, I just have been reading a lot about tech as usually. I did this the last 20 years and I think 2013, the Bitcoin appeared the first times with regard to the blogs and the digital blogs I read at that point of time. And then I decided basically to dig into this technology and analyze how Bitcoin and so on is functioning. And since then, I have become, let's call it a fan of this technology, and I developed as a hobby. And then back in 2017, I said that this technology will really change the world. And then I said that I would like to found this blockchain center, and together with the university executive team, we then defined basically how this blockchain center could be set up, and that's basically how we did it. So to shorten down the answer, I I simply read a lot. I have been open to new technologies. I read a lot about Bitcoin until I understood it, and then I decided to dedicate 24/7 of my time to this technology. That's basically the story in short. What about you, Yip?
Well, we actually met each other in 2012 already, right? I wrote my master thesis under your guidance, but it was nothing to do with blockchain. But it was about the intangible value of assets, like the market, how do you say, market capitalization of intangible assets, because Philipp was one of the experts in trademarks and IP valuation. And I wanted to understand what is behind reputation, like when companies behave well, how can they signal it and how can they create value? And this has never really let me rest, because I found, like, why don't we have mechanisms in the market that price something that is intangible in an efficient way? Now I came to blockchain, I was like, wow, we have these token economics and a better tool to address market coordination. So I was just fascinated by the people who understand technology, understand market dynamics, and come together, maybe also with the vision to have a open, inclusive system. But Philipp, you mentioned you thought that the ecosystem, like in 2016, you thought that the technology is going to change the world. What made you think that? Why is that technology so disruptive?
Well, that the technology is disrupted. I think this was not very clear at the outset. At the outset, it was just very, very clear that the technology is there to stay, that you cannot switch it off, and that it's fascinating that it might change the world. I think this was quite clear already in 2013. But how large it could get, that El Salvador now adopted Bitcoin as a legal tender and so on. This, of course, was not expected. But given for me, one of the key aspects is, and I think I have a slide on this later on, one of the key aspects is analyzing technologies. How are they growing, and which technologies have already been diffusing in the world and so on. And if you then try to discover a small, tiny technology and expect it to grow, then you can potentially extrapolate what is possible to achieve here. And this was, in my mind, this is clear with blockchain technology since years, but very often people are not open enough, such that they are not investigating the technology. People think that whatever they have in mind is the truth, and they are not open to be able to basically revise what they are thinking. They are not open for this technology, and then they are basically not seeing how this technology is developing. My experience is also that especially elderly people have some issues with understanding blockchain technology and Bitcoin, very often because they have like a predisposition of how things are and how things should be and so on. And blockchain technology, especially Bitcoin, is very different. So honestly, you need to have a high degree of openness to become challenged by this technology. And without such openness, without the time to learn, and without thousands of hours to be invested, people cannot understand blockchain technology. And therefore, I think this openness is important. Education is very important, and also what is very important is the time to be invested in blockchain technology, because without investing time, people just cannot understand it. It's as simple as that.
Okay. You speak to a lot of different stakeholders in the ecosystem, some of them very influential, like regulatory bodies, bodies that actually shape industry standards, for example. What are the major questions currently that occupy them, and what are kind of the latest insights that we're having in these kind of stakeholder areas?
That's a good question. I think the key point is to whom are you talking to, right? And very often we talk about the question, is Bitcoin already diffused in the technology, in the society, for example? Is it already been there, or will it come? Where is the killer application of blockchain technology? When will there be the breakthrough in the society, and so on? But to be honest, I think these questions, they don't really make sense, because you have to really reflect with whom you are talking. Are you talking to young people, like aged 20 to 25? Coming out of university, having a hell lot of time to invest. And that's, for example, our students. They are very, very open. They also, not everybody, of course, but many of them are very open. They have the time to invest. And after finishing their studies, they are very, very, very optimistic regarding cryptocurrencies, right? But if you're talking to decision makers who are, say, 60 plus or 65 plus, then you will not see such an openness, and therefore people are much, much, much more skeptical. And the skepticism is also not fading away, because people are not willing and not able to invest time to learn about blockchain and crypto and Bitcoin, right? So therefore, you cannot really pose this question in this clarity, I would say. So you always have to differentiate between, for example, young people and elderly people, and in between there are all kinds of subgroups, subgroups according to education, according to age class, according to gender, and so on. And here we see the technology is coming from the younger people. The technology is coming from the male gender. It's luckily changing, but that's basically still the origin. And it's coming basically from people who are somehow have an affinity towards IT. Yeah? That needs to be opposed to people who just do not want to deal at all with IT. Those people will also have difficulties to understand blockchain technology, right? So that's, for me, the three origins where the technology is coming from. That's the people. That's also the destinations where the technology is diffusing the first and the fastest. Unfortunately, that's the male gender, but this is luckily changing. It's young people, and it's people with some kind of affinity towards IT, and from this origin, it's basically spreading through all kinds of clusters in the society. And what's very interesting is, what you have to agree here is, it's not necessarily related to the degree of education. Yeah, so there are also people who do understand, who do like crypto, and who are open to Bitcoin, who might have not attended university, but who are, I don't know, mechanical engineers without a study, right? So it's independent from studying. Sometimes you see younger people who have a higher adoption rate and a higher openness as opposed to, for example, people who have studied law, right? So it's not related necessarily to to the degree of studying at school or at a university. And I think this is also very important. It's very important. It's unrelated to the ethical background. You have people with Hispanic background, European background, you have people from Asia and elsewhere. And this ethical background apparently does not matter concerning the openness and the diffusion and understanding the technology. And this is very interesting. There are some very interesting studies for the US. There you see very strong differences across gender, of course, and across age, but you do not see any differences according to the ethical background, or I don't know what the perfect name for this is, but for the genetic background of the people and where they reside on the world. And with this, in my mind, it's a very inclusive technology. It's a fascinating technology. The technology is currently developing very dynamically, and it's a very inclusive technology. Everybody on the entire globe who wants to get, in contact with the technology can easily do so. You are organizing these webinars, right? We are doing similar things at the university. There is hundreds of hours of content on YouTube and thousands of pages to read on the internet, white papers, Wikipedia, and everything. So it's all out there, right? But you have to be interested, and not everybody is interested. You have to be open. Not everybody is open, and you do have to invest some time. That's necessarily required, and of course, not everybody is having time, right? But at the outset, it's a very, very inclusive technology that surprises me very, very often.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're doing a lot to change also the landscape, to bring more women into the ecosystem, for example. With the Dlt Talent Program, training hundreds of women a year, so they can shape the economy of the future. I actually know that you work on a number of really, really cool projects that are structuring the ecosystem. One of them, for example, the project on token standards, for example. But I just wanted to ask, maybe you can share one or two insights on the projects you're working on that you find very, very important for the future development of our ecosystem. And what are you doing there? What is the problem being solved, and where are we standing?
Yes, it's nice that you asked this question, because such questions are typically never asked. So therefore, it's nice that you are asking here. What is the background? So at the beginning, we have founded the Blockchain Center. This is simply an academic institute at the university. But we are not trying to do basic research. We are trying to do things which are important for the ecosystem and for the community. And that's why we very often talk to companies, which is sometimes surprising for universities, but we are really talking to practitioners. That's how academics call people from the practice, because we want to understand what are real problems which are to be solved, right? And therefore, the Blockchain Center acts as an institute, as a platform, as a think tank. And we also write a lot of articles on various topics: digital securities, the digital euro, Bitcoin, and all kinds of things. And then we felt that, the story I just told you sounds good, right? But the point is, a think tank is difficult to position in the society. The think tank is also difficult to really sell, because a think tank is something which sounds good, but you also don't really know what is under the hood. Think tank sounds cool, but you don't know what's beyond that. And that's why we then had the idea that we had to create multiple initiatives where we found that there might be some problems which we could address. And for example, one of these, let's call it, initiatives is the Dlt Talent Program. Yip, you are also participating there as an organizer and founder of this initiative. And there we invented an education mode where we say we are doing coaching and mentoring for women. And we are doing this in a bi-weekly way over the course of 3 months. And we are not lecturing people over there. People can read their stuff on the internet. People can watch YouTube videos and listen to podcasts. There is so much material out there. There is no need for another lecture, right? And therefore, we ask people to do the building of knowledge at home. And during our coaching and mentoring session, we are trying to reflect on what people have learned. People are getting some kind of homework, then people are asked to present their homework. So it's basically a sequence of coaching and mentoring session. And This, in my mind, works extremely well for the digital way, where we can then meet remotely. And here we see that digital education is much more than a lecturer holding a lecture online, as opposed to a lecturer holding a lecture offline, right? It's not just turning the camera on and recording the lecture. You know, there is so much YouTube stuff out there. It's more about coaching and mentoring. And that's where we founded the DLT program, Dlt Talent Program, with the idea of coaching women. And it appears to be very successful because people are moving into the technology and find jobs after we have tried our best to coach them. Then that was a very lengthy initiative. Then, because it does work so well, we also said, okay, let's take exactly the same project and let's call it DeFi talents. Yeah, so we do exactly the same, but without the gender restriction, and do it for everybody, women and men, and do basically education in a coaching way for people wanting to learn DeFi. That this will start next Monday, and we have had 400 applicants. I'm not sure if you know this, but we had 400 applicants, which really shows that it works. And then we have now founded the so-called Digital Euro Association, DEA. That's an association sitting in Germany, because we felt that, for example, in the public authorities and also politicians and governments, they sometimes invite people to speak about the digital euro and about cryptocurrencies and so on. And then they invite just anybody in their network, but these people not necessarily have an understanding of what's going on in the field, right? So the mission of DEA was to basically bring together all kinds of people in Europe and the world who have something to say or who want to say something in the topic of digital euro. That's the euro on blockchain systems, for example. And then to basically create this kind of community, such that when politicians or somebody wants to identify people who have some knowledge in the field, then they can ask DEA, and the Digital Euro Association guarantees that there is a level of understanding of the members, such that people can really talk about the digital euro, because there are so many people holding presentations about the digital euro who do not have any understanding, right? That was the outset. And now, for example, we see that the European Central Bank is trying to launch their digital euro in 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And we also now see that in the society, there is not much knowledge, such that the ECB and their ambitions are difficult to challenge, right? Because there is not much understanding out there. And I think the DEA now will turn also to some kind of sparing partner for the ECB, not mandated, but we simply use the methods such as social media to articulate ourselves, because for DEA and the people there, we think it's extremely important that the digital euro stays or it becomes anonymous, right? In case the digital euro is not being implemented in an anonymous way, then the central banks and governments in Europe could inspect any euro transaction people are doing, right? So therefore, anonymity is one of the key points we would like to have there. And there are not many instances in the EU who are really articulating this very, very, very strongly, right? That's the DEA. And by the way, in case anybody of you wants to get involved in any of these initiatives, just write us an email. We're happy for anybody out there wanting to contribute. It's all done in a very open way. But as said, people need to invest some time, of course, as always. And then the initiative, the last one I would like to mention, you just mentioned it, Yip, is called ITSA or ITSA. And ITSA is an association, once again, a non-profit association, which is trying to standardize token markets. This means we are trying to identify tokens, and we are also trying to categorize tokens. I need to explain this, especially now with the realm of DeFi. You have dozens of tokens being generated day by day. I would guess so that it's maybe hundreds per month, which are generated. That means which are deployed on all kinds of blockchain systems, primarily Ethereum, and nobody is structuring this. Everybody dumps his token on the Ethereum chain, and nobody is basically keeping a register of the tokens, which tokens are there, and what kind of tokens is it? Is it DeFi tokens? Is it utility tokens? Is it security tokens, and so on? So a token register basically is not existing. And ITSA or ITSA, called International Token Standardization Association wants to build and maintain a register for such tokens. And so far we have identified and categorized, I think 6,000 or 7,000 tokens. Of them we have categorized, I think 2,000. And with this, we are covering 99% of the market, right? It works very well. And we currently also really do a lot of research. For example, we inspect tokens out there from Uniswap and from other DeFi protocols. We are basically grouping them because nobody can tell easily what tokens are belonging to the Uniswap ecosystem, or what tokens are belonging to the Chainlink ecosystem, or what tokens belong to the XYZ DeFi ecosystem. There is no register. And we are now doing some research and also presenting a couple of articles and so on, where we are presenting, for example, lists of tokens belonging to the Uniswap ecosystem, all being then also registered or identified and partly also categorized, right? Let's see where it brings us to. For us, as we running the ITSA, we are representing 200 members at this point of time. And for us, it's also a lot of learning, because when we began with ITSA, I think 3 years ago, there was no DeFi yet, right? So we just felt that 3 years ago, the Ethereum ecosystem is an ecosystem which is open source, and everybody can deploy his or her tokens on the chain. So this should lead to some kind of chaos on the chain. This was the hypothesis. And then indeed, 1.5 years later, DeFi arrived with all kinds of initiatives and tokens being deployed on Ethereum. And that basically really gave us our justification, because then we actually had the chance to sort something, because then everybody dumped his token on the chain, such that there is not many possibilities to see how many tokens are there, what types of tokens is it, on which chains are they running. We are supporting multiple ones, and so on. So the idea is to providing some structure and some systematic order into the very chaotic world of open sourced blockchain system. That's the ITSA, and that's the 4, I think, very good initiatives. We also have launched other initiatives which were partly not developed so well, but we are trying with each initiative to do something which solves some kind of problem, right? That's basically that's everything what I'm doing with relation to the university, by the way.
But you do so many more things apart from being at the university. What excites you actually, being also an investor in the ecosystem? Where do you see biggest growth opportunities?
Yeah, that's also an interesting question. So I also invested a little bit of money in Bitcoin, of course, and all kinds of tokens. And my attitude here is at this point of time, you really need to know what you're doing, and this requires you to invest a hell lot of time to inspect whether a token is good or bad. And the reason is there are no rating agencies out there which would say, okay, this token is a good one, this is a bad one. And given this, I also have lost quite some money in the ICO wave because I thought, okay, that's a good idea, should work, and then it did not work, or the team was gone suddenly. Therefore, concerning crypto assets, I would say that unless you are investing a hell lot of time, it makes sense to be very minimalistic. Not to be opposed to the Bitcoin maximalist position, right? That's a different word. But with minimalistic, I would say it really makes sense, and partly is also enough to simply trust in Bitcoin, Ethereum, say the top 10 tokens, maybe the top 50 tokens, and so on. But also, unless you have enough time, disregard tokens at position 101 to 5,000, because it just takes a lot of time inspecting all this. There might be huge chances out there, but there are also huge risks out there. And given this, and given the scarcity of time, and given the absence of rating agencies and so on, from a crypto asset perspective, it makes very much sense to simply focus on the top 10, top 20, top 30, top 50, maybe even just the top 2. The upside and the downside relationship of an investment, even among the top 2, that's Bitcoin and Ethereum, is still very good for investors, I think. And then concerning startups and investments in companies, It's very interesting to see how, but you have to really analyze very honestly what happened in the last years, right? ICO tokens very often failed. Some of them survived, and some of them also became very large nowadays. Concerning startups and enterprises and companies, we now see that the enterprise blockchain sector is basically not existing anymore, right? 3-4 years ago, we had all kinds of projects potentially using Hyperledger and R3 and here and there and VTrade and like these enterprise solutions based on permission systems. And all these enterprise solutions did not hold their promise. That's why, for example, I didn't hear much from R3 for quite a while. I didn't hear anything from VTrade now for 2 years. Hyperledger and IBM is also very, very, very quiet since the beginning of Corona and so on. So therefore, I would say that the enterprise sector, at least from an investment perspective, doesn't make sense because not much is going on there. And this needs to be opposed to crypto assets, where we have a daily transaction volume of more than 80 billion US dollars, I would say, so day by day. And we do not have this in the enterprise world. So therefore, I'm very skeptical with enterprise solutions and so on. And one reason is that companies in the legacy enterprise sector are very slow. They are very often partly also not understanding the technology. Once there is a person working there who really understands the technology, then very often we have seen that these persons are quitting, going elsewhere. And what are they doing? They found a crypto startup. This leads to the fact that the best potential of people are moving towards crypto. And therefore, you also see a quite interesting dynamic going on in the crypto space and not in the enterprise space. I know it from 2-3 corporate venture capitalist companies, that's investors belonging to large-scale corporations. They have money and they would love to invest in enterprise blockchain startups, but they also say that there are not enough, or they are basically close to none enterprise blockchain startups, because startups are increasingly being built just in the crypto space, DeFi space, NFT space, and so on and so forth, but not in the slowly developing enterprise area. I think this is a very interesting observation, which comes a little bit surprising, because 2, 3, 4 years ago, the expectations at that point of time were very, very, very different. But you see that HR are basically people, entrepreneurs, they move where they have the great chance to succeed, and that's the crypto domain, right? And one reason for this is the upside potential of earning money, but it's also that these people, they just don't want to have any legacy stuff around them, because it makes them so extremely slow, right? They just don't want to be dependent on large-scale companies. That's why they do crypto, because with crypto, there are less dependencies towards legacy large-scale companies. I think this can be said, right? And therefore, concerning investment, once again, with enterprise solutions, I'm very skeptical. With crypto solutions, it does make sense to invest them more deeply. But the point is, and this is the last point I would like to make concerning this question, when you are trying to invest in a startup, you need to envision the future in, say, plus 2 years. So what will be hot in 2 years? So in case now is the NFT wave, this was in March this year, Easter this year, there was the NFT wave, suddenly NFT was everywhere. And then suddenly many people founded startups and created an NFT marketplace, right? Today, I had another talk with a friend. He's now founding an NFT marketplace, right? But in my mind, this is too late, because the NFT marketplaces, which have land grabbed all the market share, they have been founded 2 years ago, right? But you cannot undo these 2 years again. So it just doesn't make sense that now that a specific area really grows and thrives, that you're now jumping on the same business models, because those people who are running these businesses, they have invented the business model 2 years ago, and they have 2 years of being advanced to those people joining during the hype, right? So, and this as a consequence leads to my opinion that I might be wrong, but I think my opinion, at least so far, it worked very well. It makes sense to to imagine what would be relevant and grow in plus 2 years, that's 2023, 2024, and then infer what could this be, and then basically imagine founding a startup in exactly such fields which are undiscovered at this point of time, which are ignored at this point of time. People are not having interest right now, but potentially then growing and then providing or solving, for example, a market problem, something like this, in 2 years from now. And then in 2 years, then the hype is in this domain. Then you will see other people joining in plus 2 years. But those people who are then joining in plus 2 years, for them it's too late, because in this specific domain, you once again have to join now. I hope you get this point, right? It's not easy to, it's easier to explain this with a graph and draw some charts and so on. But I think it's very crucial to understand these timing dynamics of what is now and what will be in 2 years, and what is now and what has been 2 years ago. Very often people are not making the distinction between now, minus 2 years, and plus 2 years. And especially for building a company, this is absolutely crucial.
In particular, when you look at S-curve innovation movements, right, it's super difficult to predict what's happening in 2 years. Maybe people from the chat have already been asking, what are the mega trends you see within blockchain that will peak in the coming 2 to 3 years, if you want to share?
Yeah, that's a very question which is puzzling. I'm puzzling myself each day. What is interesting in potentially in 2 years, and I give you my opinion, but you know how it is. I also might be terribly wrong here. My feeling is that DeFi will grow, but DeFi has become such a sexy term that everybody's now doing DeFi. And if you really think it through, you have like dozens of startups or maybe hundreds of startups doing DeFi stuff. So they will cover any free spot out there, and it will be difficult to do something in DeFi, because this domain of DeFi has become a little bit too sexy for people. Exactly the same we have now also observed in the NFT space, but the NFT space is a little bit behind. So I think NFT and art is basically already done. It's not easy anymore to do something in this space, but NFT is also a cross-sectional technology, and it will also be adapted in multiple domains. So in case you are combining NFT and consumer finance, that's brands. Yeah. So brands like Coca-Cola, brands like Apple, and so on, what can they do with NFTs? I think there is some interesting intersection there. Then NFT and gaming is a very interesting intersection, which is currently getting crowded, right? This then also leads to the topic of the metaverse. That's basically anonymous virtual identities who are in virtual spaces doing crazy things and living there, basically. Everything related to this is potentially very interesting to inspect now, because right now it sounds kind of weird and kind of crazy, but in 2 years from now, it could be the right time to be there. Then another field is the identity topic. So basically mapping my identity with everything I have, certificates, domains I own, email addresses, passport, and all kinds of things, mapping all this on blockchain systems in a data protected compliance way. This is a hot topic in the last years, but I think it will also remain very hot in the future. Then I think one topic which is entirely overseen at this point of time is the Bitcoin Lightning Network domain. There is so extremely much going on in the Lightning Network domain. But speaking for Germany now, I don't know any startup in this field. Yeah, maybe I have overseen them. Maybe I don't know them. It's growing. But maybe there are not many Lightning Network startups in Germany, but I also might have overseen them, of course. But given the technology and the status we are, and the tractions the technology is getting from El Salvador, you could also expect that there are 20 startups in Germany speaking now, focusing on Lightning Network. And what else? Yeah, and speaking also for Germany, we now have good laws in place. So things relating to the domain of digital securities could also become now now very, very interesting now that the law is basically done in a very nice way. I think these are the domains I'm currently thinking of.
What would excite you, like, personally? Where do you actually would wish to have innovation, even when you can't see it currently in the market?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think speaking of legacy businesses, I think it would be very interesting to see much more adoption from the side of the industry, like companies such as Daimler, Bosch, Siemens, they all are producing, for example, machines. These machines could become autonomous. Autonomous machines could receive money and send money in the future. And in this space, there is not much happening. There is just there is one company in Germany doing this. It's called Cash on Ledger. They are doing such things. But given the size of the machine economy in the future, there could be much more happening. But the industry is not so much interested here yet. The industry has also been hit by Corona and now the automotive crisis in Germany and so on. So there is reasons why the legacy industry here, machinery and so on, are not tackling this. But still, I would definitely wish that more things are happening on the side of the industry. And industry includes manufacturing, logistics, mobility, medical technology, and everything. It's a huge block, and not much is happening there, right? This is one domain, and another domain is everything related to developing countries, lightning network, similar like El Salvador, people doing and requiring remittances, exchanging Bitcoin in US dollar, forth and back and so on. I think there will also be a lot happening in this domain. And indeed, I would also love to see more in this field. We see a lot happening in El Salvador these days. And it's pretty clear that more will happen also in similar countries, could be South America, could be elsewhere in the world, but it's so clear that El Salvador is not the last country to adopt Bitcoin. This is so absolutely clear. And therefore, I'm sometimes surprised that people are still not seeing what's going on in El Salvador. In El Salvador, you might have seen it, Bitcoin has become legal tender. And now, after a couple of weeks of launching the state app on the smartphone, such that people can own and transfer Bitcoin and US dollar after a couple of months there, this app has been installed by 30% of the population, and this is growing, right? So 2.4 million people have installed the app, and the country has 6.4 million inhabitants. So it's 30% market adoption in just 3 weeks. This is massive. And I think there will be other countries and other solutions and other businesses exactly in this area in the future.
Okay, amazing. I think talking about mega trends, one thing that I am seeing and also wanted to hear your perspective on, because you come from that domain, is IP in blockchain. Like, on the one hand side, it is mainly driven by open source technology. On the other hand, we're seeing a lot of IP activity happening across the space. And the question is, how do you see the interrelation between these two? I think intuitively one would say it's opposing, but maybe there's another way to see that. I don't know. Would love to hear your view.
No, it makes very much sense. At the end of the day, blockchain systems only exist because it's open sourced. With closed sourced system, we would not have any blockchain system, right? This is one aspect of IP. In case we're talking about IP, then very often we talk about computer code. That's the open source discussion. There would be, as I said, no blockchain system without open source technologies. But IP is also much more, right? IP is all kinds of intellectual property rights. That's basically trademarks, patents, and copyrights, and so on, images, text, and so on. And to be honest, it makes extremely much sense to put all these domains, copyright, trademarks, patents, to put all these domains on blockchain systems. But the key point is they are already regulated, and because they are regulated, it's difficult for a blockchain network to basically be integrated into this existing regulation, right? You just, to be very clear here, the patent register for patents is existing. You cannot move the patent register to a blockchain system overnight because there is law in place saying that we just keep it as it is, right? And therefore, I think it would be, from a higher normative perspective, it would make so much sense to inspect patents on blockchain, trademarks on blockchain, copyrights on blockchain with the areas of imaging, audio, and all kinds of things. But you typically have existing law in place, which is preventing from fully moving things onto a blockchain system, right? And therefore, after observing blockchain for a couple of years, I have the feeling that blockchain is always then the right technology to support things and to grow systems when existing law is not being touched. Yeah, so this would then mean that IP and blockchain is then a perfect fit when new types of IP are being discovered. And these new types of IP, they are then put on blockchain systems because they are not regulated in the legacy and existing world, right? A perfect example for this is the topic of generative art. This is at the intersection of NFT, art, and blockchain. This means that you are not necessarily uploading an existing JPEG file to the chain as NFT, because this would imply copyright issues and touching the existing law, but rather you are uploading an algorithm to the blockchain. You are seeding the algorithm with some kind of random number, could be a hash, and then the algorithm is basically automatically creating a new artificial image based on the seed, right? So I hope you get this point. You're not uploading a JPEG file like uploading a file elsewhere, but the chain, the blockchain system is creating the image because you have uploaded the algorithm how to generate an art piece on the blockchain. You did not upload the image to the blockchain. That's a huge difference. And this domain is absolutely fascinating. It's called generative art. And here you see that entirely new IP domains are being created because here the originator, that's very important, the originator of the art piece is not a human being, yeah, creating a JPEG file, uploading it to the chain, and then still the originator is the human being behind. No, with generative art, the originator of the image is the blockchain system, because that's where the algorithm sits who is producing the image. And therefore, you don't have any copyright issues anymore because there is no human being creating the IP. It's the system, it's the chain who is creating the IP. And that's basically, in my mind, very fascinating because here you see very nicely that new domains of IP are being generated, and it makes sense to put them on blockchain system. And another last example here is the idea of the NBA in the US. NBA is an association for basketball, and they have searched for more ways to license out their brand, to do merchandising things and so on. And what they have now tokenized are moments in time when a specific basketball player has did something very good, you know, like has created a super dunk with the basketball, or did something very special, the winning event of the basketball game and so on. And by tokenizing these moments in time, as Philipp, I could go to the flow chain and purchase a specific moment in time of this basketball game. And then, for example, I'm the owner of the second where the judge in the game is deciding that team A is winning, and I'm basically owning this moment in time, right, in this game. And you see here, this is difficult to explain, but you also see that these are entirely new domains of IP, which cannot be protected by any other things, but where it does make sense for the licensor, those people providing the license, that they basically grant me the right to own this kind of moment in time, right? That's very, very, very fascinating. And here you see, as I said, putting existing legacy institutions on blockchain system is difficult and impossible. It's also very slow, but creating new domains which are truly blockchain relevant such as cryptocurrencies, such as generative art, and so on, makes very much sense. And a last point here, if I may.
Yeah.
This is also exactly the same way in the area of digital securities, where the financial sector is trying to migrate the existing financial instruments on blockchain systems. So they are trying to migrate existing formats onto a blockchain. Yeah, that's called digitization. But in my mind, it does work, and it's also progressing. It's also developing positively. But there is one aspect which is much more accelerated. That's those topics where you have true assets originating on-chain directly, and these are called crypto assets, right? Because they are not touching existing regulation so far, or not to this severe extent as digital securities. And therefore, in case I were an entrepreneur founding a company, I would not touch the area of digital securities, because the existing rules and the existing regulation allows you to do this, yes, but it also makes you very slow. Yeah, it's progressing positively as it's going forward, but it's progressing slowly. And being an entrepreneur who typically tries to identify the best opportunities for himself, then this person would basically have to go to the crypto domain, right? Or to the NFT domain. Why is this? Because you don't have existing laws in place which you have to comply with so strongly. But you always have to comply with money laundering and tax stuff and so on, of course. But these are tax regimes which you can handle. But tax regimes such as digital securities are very difficult to handle. Oh, I couldn't hear you, Yip.
Okay, Yip is moving out. She's muted. How do I unmute you? She's moving out of her co-working space. So,
Okay.
and she gave away her rights to manage the session to me. So Philip, thank you. This is like amazing. I mean, I'm getting just inspired. My brain is just like growing new hair behind the below. And we are going into breakout rooms now. So we're going to be like 4 to 5 people in breakout rooms. And topic of discussion would be like just what you took away from Philipp's super interesting speech here, sharing with us. So I'm gonna hit the button and we're gonna have 10 minutes to talk, and then we come back and then we just say hi and bye as we usually do. So thank you, and enjoy your breakout session. And please motivate yourself to talk and discuss.